Welcome to DESIGN MUSE Podcast, a podcast meant to inspire, educate, and advocate on all things commercial interior design. I am your co-host, Bridget Santos.
And I'm Melanie, Hanna.
We are DESIGN MUSE Podcast.
So this is our first day recording.
First day ever, DESIGN MUSE Podcast.
Here we are. We made it.
We made it. It's been a long time coming, a lot of thoughts, a lot of effort, a lot of inspiration coming to our minds to form the name DESIGN MUSE. So you want to talk a little bit about how we came up with DESIGN MUSE?
Yeah, of course. So I have to tell you about, 9 months ago, you text me and you said, Mel, I have an idea. Crazy idea, but I think you're going to like it. And immediately when I got your text that we should have a podcast together, the answer was instantly yes. Absolutely.
We didn't even have to think about it.
No.
We were like, absolutely.
No. And so when we started to just think about this and everything started to come together, we made immediate decisions on things.
Totally.
We used Miro to collaborate and came up with names and brain dumped ideas, and it was just the perfect match.
Definitely.
And it was a no-brainer, right?
Totally. And we both have such a strong want just to inspire this community of designers and this industry that we're in and have such a passion for it. I just felt like it went hand in hand with talking about it on a podcast, you know, letting others hear about our experiences, our destination point to this point in our careers. So it was just that natural level of, hey, this is who I want to do it with. We should do it. Like, we've got the perfect story to do it. First ever boss.
Right.
I mean, come on. It
A
was
worker.
great.
Still to this day.
To this day.
No, but, you know, coming up with the name, I think was really a lot of fun. And being able to brain dump all these different ideas on words that meant something to us and meant something to our career paths or our industry. And when we came across DESIGN MUSE, it was instantaneous that was it.
It just felt like our brand identity. I mean, I think muse was the key word, right? It's such a strong name for a woman, especially in any industry. But to be a muse is just to be someone who would inspire a group of people or a group of people would look up to a muse. So I think muse was that key word that really kind of identified us in this industry. And then, of course, you know, just having design there to make sure like everybody on this podcast knew what we were talking about and educating on and talking about our experiences. DESIGN MUSE just kind of came together as a brand identity really for us.
For sure. And muse is the part of the inspiring, right? And the design, it encompasses so much that we do. We're interior designers, we're curious creators, we're all the things. And so we wanted to be able to inspire not just interior designers, but anybody that touches interior design.
And anybody that, like you said, touches it, which is pretty much everyone on a daily basis. The way you feel when you walk inside of a space, the way that you feel when you go into a restaurant or making memories with somebody, that all has to do with what we think about as designers to have non-designer people experience a space and just talk more about what goes into it from an interior design standpoint. Because I think a lot of times to the average person, they might not really understand what interior designers fully do.
How many decisions have to be made?
I mean,
it's insane.
Crazy. One wall can have 20 transitions and all these things you have to pick. And people think that just happens, but that's all us working on the backside, figuring everything out and making it seamless and a great space that people can come in, make core memories, feel comfortable, feel like they're in a great environment. And that's where that design is just so pushed through. And then the muse side just being so inspiring.
Interior designers really impact people. That's our job.
Right.
We're storytellers. we evoke emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more than pinky and paint colors and pillows. And I can't tell you how many times, you and I've talked about this a lot, that's what people think that we do.
Right.
It's so much more. So it's exciting to have a platform to be able to educate everyone and then inspire people, inspire those that are in college or in high school too, because I don't know about you, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And there's so many career paths you can go down. There's so many avenues that you can go down. And I'm really excited for us to bring on some of those people, to interview them, to talk about their experiences and their path, their journey, because that's relevant. It's important.
Right.
And it's part of it. And it's evolving too.
And being, students in school, like you said, they don't understand the capacity of the interior design community in the professional world. I mean, I didn't in school. I heavily go back to my alma mater, talk to students, try to be a mentor. You're such a natural mentor as well. So just that level of really understanding how big of an industry we are and everything that it can offer, because I didn't even know what multifamily design was. And, here I am, been doing it for 10 years. And it's like, wow, in school, I never thought like, hey, I'm going to go be a multifamily interior designer or whatever it is, right? So we just think, oh, I hope I end up at a big firm and getting to do projects. That's all you really think about in school. But there's sales reps. There's so many parts of the industry that make a project be able to be successful.
Right. And I was actually having a lunch with someone that you and I both have worked with in our past careers. And we were having lunch this week and we were talking about how I was telling her about Design Muse and what we're doing with it. And she said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you guys are doing this together because I have a friend that is a set designer that I went to school with and no one knows that that's a path that you could go down. That's exciting to be able to share that and bring on those different people that are in these different industries. And you and I touch so many sectors right now. It's unbelievable.
Right.
We pretty much touch all of them but hospitals.
Pretty much, which we've done a little bit of that in our past, but I'll steer clear from those.
Stories to be told later.
Yes, TBD, to be continued.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But across our careers, we pretty much design almost, I feel like almost all those things.
Definitely.
I haven't worked on a set, but I think that would be something I could go into and have a learning curve.
Right.
So what was one of the most surprising things about the career that you didn't know that now you're like, oh man?
I feel like I knew nothing coming out of college. I mean, I am avid on Louisiana Tech. I loved Louisiana Tech. I had amazing professors, still talk to them to this day, still go back. But when you get out into the professional world, I feel like I just didn't know anything. And it wasn't until I entered the professional world and met you that I could really understand what are my options? What can I even do? What am I even supposed to do in the professional world? And I think the biggest surprise to me is I landed in a sector that I've kind of solely focused on, done other sectors, but an area of design that I really learned in the professional world, not so much in the school. But I think to your point of different sectors, if you have that core base, if you have those core fundamentals that you're working on, that you have learned, that you know about, you can take that into whatever sector you're working in. So I think there's a little bit in the industry, you have to be this type of designer to do this type of work. But I really feel like if you have a strong core balance and a core education and what interior design is and what the end goal is, what things need to look like at the end, all that middle part can be figured out from sector to sector and, standards from one developer to the next or one company to the next and really push that through with your core strong education.
Right. One of the most surprising things that they don't talk about in school, and now with me being in all these different sectors, because multifamily, student housing, corporate, hospitality, government, they're all very different processes, which no one talked about the process of it. We just talked about schematic design, concept.
Right.
So excited to do a concept. And a concept narrative and schematic design, design development, construction documents or contract documents, and then CA. And, so you learned about all the different phases of the projects. But what you did, if you had a specific one, if you knew as a student what you wanted to go into, if they could get, colleges could gear those classes towards different processes. So hospitality is very different than a multifamily job. Even it's closer to multifamily and student housing than any of them, but corporate is completely different. If you're a corporate designer, your workplace designer, you better know life safety, you better know code. You are basically the architect.
Right.
So you are doing it all. And not that you don't do those things necessarily in multifamily, but it's not, a lot of times I'm working with outside architects or even architects in my own firm.
Exactly.
And their scope is that.
Right.
And
so let's talk a little bit, like jumping off of that, about how architects and design, like interior designer versus architect, and how we interact with each other and how we play. Because like you said, there's times that, we're both licensed interior designers where we are the acting architect on the job. Like there is no architect. We are that. We're doing a tenant finish out. We're doing something where it's our responsibility to know life safety codes, everything like that, versus when we're on a project with an architect who falls under their scope, but we act as an interior design consultant. So I think there's definitely a difference in the industry, working with architects. But I think what maybe people don't realize is the architect and the interior designer, we're on the same team.
Yes.
I mean, our end goals are the same. And the push and the pull between architecture and interior design is so important to be collaborative and on the same team, because
communicate.
Yes. Communication.
Yes.
And you don't want to see this beautiful architecture building that's a certain style and walk in and feel totally disconnected from what's on the exterior. And, when people say to me, like, what's your style? What's your interior design style? I'm like, well, I don't have a style. What's the location? What's the project look like? What demographic are we going after? It's really not about what style we like personally. It's really not about style of what we just think would look pretty. It has so much more to do with the architecture, the history of the location. Where are we? What's the demographic that's going to be utilizing these spaces? It's a lot more research based on style than just, hey, I think it should look like this and this is pretty and let's do this. So
no, for sure. You know what it's about? Listening. Yes. So when young designers ask me, how can I be a great designer? I say, you can listen.
Yes.
And not to me necessarily. Listen to your clients.
Yes.
And absorb what that is, what their project, what their end goal is for that project. If it's return on investment and they want like the latest trends, that's one thing. If they want a project that is community based, then listen to that. Do your research. So it's about listening and doing that discovery process and doing it well, and then creating your concept. So if you know your why behind it and what their goals are, then it makes it easier.
Right.
But there's a lot of designers I know, and I know you know some too, that are very selfish in a sense of that, and give us a bad rep of we're just out for the next award-winning project, and that's just not true.
Right.
So it's about the client. It's about their goals.
And that's one thing that I think right out of college, I learned from you. Because, when you're right out of college, you don't really know where to start. And, it's not like your client's an interior designer, an architect that can lead you in the right path necessarily all the time. And it's our job as professionals to say, this is your vision. You've communicated your vision to me. Here's how I think that we can follow through with that vision. And like you said, that first part of it is listening to their vision. It's not our project. It's their project, their vision.
Right.
And making it the best possible project with the budget given, with the vision that's, there, and forming a successful project at the end.
Right.
And I think that's important. And not every project has a budget. I feel like people think like some spaces they walk into, they're like, oh my gosh, there's no way this, restaurant had a budget or this hotel had a budget. And it's so funny because everyone has a budget no matter who you are.
No, that's exactly
very
right.
top, very middle, whatever it is, there's always a budget. I think that drives a lot of design sometimes. And if you start with listening to the client, knowing what they want and why they want it, budget always comes into play. You know, we have to make a project be successful. So,
Right.
you know, sticking within the budget's important, but listening and knowing why you're doing from the project and continuing that all the way through, I think shows a lot more than just, hey, you need to stick within this piece of paper, do whatever you know, type of thing.
It's about having thoughtful details.
Details.
And
it doesn't have to be super
it doesn't have to be over the top. It's really about how you execute the details and how you're thinking about how things come together nominally. So one of the things in this podcast that we've talked a lot about is talking about different specific things like detailing or transitions or nominal sizes. And those things matter. We're going to be covering a lot of different things. The deal making process.
Right.
That's important.
Huge. Contracts.
Relationships.
Organization.
Organization. Your Bible for your project.
Specifications.
Yes.
I mean, everything that goes into it besides like a pretty finish board and pretty finishes. I mean, you can pull the most beautiful palette, but if you don't know that's a 4x8 sheet, you're going to have a reveal right at your, you know, it's those little things make such a big difference.
Huge difference. And another thing I want to talk about is, and you and I both experienced this. We started out in AutoCAD.
Yes.
And so every line was intentional. We had blocks for things, but we didn't have Revit files for everything. So one of the things I see with different generations coming out is they're losing their sensibility of construction, of every line has a meaning and it's a purpose.
Right.
And you have to know those dimensions. You have to know what a 2x4 is, and it's not 2x4.
Right. And it's not just some block or family that you pulled up into the model, you know? So it's intentional. And a lot of people refer to it as this generation of like clip art interior design, right? Like copying and pasting things into it to form it versus, like you said, everything needs to be intentional of why you're putting things in a certain way and space planning it a certain way and following that vision all the way through versus, you know, just, hey, these families fit in here and it'll, you know, and kind of moving on.
I want to definitely dive into that in our podcast because I think that that's so important and it's missing. And I think that there's a lot of things that when you're coming out of school, especially that you just don't know and you just think, oh, it's about modeling this up. But a lot of times what I'm seeing is the modeling, it's not getting transposed to actual construction sizes. So then people are having to go back and they're having to, when they're documenting it, they're having a hard time. Things are, as I don't know if you remember, I would always say, if you can't read it on a ruler, it shouldn't be on the drawing.
Exactly.
And I remember your face the first time I said that. You're like,
right.
Right. You know, but if it's like an odd fraction,
why is it there?
Yeah. To clarify, Bridget was right out of school.
Yes. Okay. Oh, yes. I know. That is our story.
Yeah.
Melanie was my first ever mentor and boss. I was right out of school when I joined the company there. And I think I got to learn from someone that now we've grown up to, you know, in this industry and now both in Dallas. And I still have you as a mentor.
Yeah.
I still have you as somebody I could call if something crazy happened or ask questions. And, you know, it was just learning. I think that's important for people out of school. If you're applying somewhere, who's going to be your direct mentor? Who's going to be your direct boss? Like those are great questions to ask from students out of school of, you know, you might be interviewed by the HR department or an owner or somebody that's high up, but maybe ask the question, who am I going to be directly working with? Who's going to, because that's going to end up being your direct mentor and who you're learning from. And that foundation is so important right out of school.
And having those relationships, because you and I have known it, how long now? 12, 13 years. And we have become closer and closer over the years and we've cheered each other on. We've helped pick each other up.
Right.
I think that that's really important to talk about both the good and bad in this podcast and be really real because I think those ebb and flows that in those stumbling blocks, those are lessons learned. So important. So one of my favorite people to follow, and I such fangirl her, is Sarah Blakely. And now Snakes.
Yes.
I just admire her, and she's so real, and she's a mom, and she shows her kids messing up her house and just really real. Right. And so following her story, and she posted something this week actually, and it was about how she was taught, her father taught her to learn from your failures, to count them is basically blessings. And so when I read that, it sums up when I look back on my career and all the different stepping stones of where I didn't know what was possible now. And part of it that she was talking about is manifestation. Yes. So now I know that if I speak it into the world enough, or I believe it enough, anything is possible. But with hard work. Right. Because that's the key. It doesn't just come. No, it does not. Right. This podcast has not just showed up.
Right. This podcast has not just happened. No. It takes a lot of hard work. And I think, projects take a lot of hard work. Yes. Lessons learned take a lot of years off our life, to be honest. I mean, we care about these projects like it's our own being. And when there's a mistake, if there's a problem we have to figure out, and then problem solving and solution-based answers, that's another key word that...
Or evidence-based.
Yes, evidence-based. All of those things are so important. When don't come to somebody with just a problem, come to them with the problem with already the solution in mind.
I feel like you're repeating myself.
I know. And it's so funny because people we've both worked with or who have worked under us will message us and say, you guys both say this same thing.
I love it.
And it's because I learned it from you. Yeah. And it's so important in our industry to know things do not go smoothly.
No. So I want to back up a little bit. So thank you for your kind words about mentorship, but I have learned so much from you. Oh, and so I think that's one of the reasons why why we're sitting here right now. Right. We own this entity. We're in it to win it. And you know what? We've given ourselves grace. And I think that's one of the things that's really missing from our industry right now, and especially right now, is empathy and grace. Right. And we have just been there and just learn from each other.
We have. And become moms. And become all these things that it's not easy in an industry that... No. And not just the industry, but for two women that are so passionate about our careers. Right. Because not everyone is quite, as passionate as we are, about things. Right. And when you add being a mom and trying to raise a family and everything else that comes into it, you'll need that person to give you grace and to understand that you're going to find a solution and we're going to get there. But, just really kind of tackling those life moments along with career moments, because at the end of the day, as much as people say keep your work and your personal life separate, we all know that if something goes bad at work during the day, it's going to affect, it's hard to turn that off and on.
It is.
And especially in our industry, I think, because
a lot of women don't have kids in our industry, or they get out. Right. And it's unattainable. Right. So how can we make that better for the women in our industry? And also provide a path for the men in our industry, because I welcome them. Come on. I love seeing on the architecture side more women in the industry. And I just think it's amazing, especially here in Dallas. It's saturated with more women. It's starting to even out. But interior design is lacking on that side.
It's still so heavily. Yeah. Because I feel like there's this notion that interior design is the pretty decorating things, and that's a woman feminine aspect. Right. But the reality is there's so many aspects of interior design that are masculine. There's so many, and no matter
technical.
What. Yeah, like feminine or masculine, whatever, if you're a man or whatever it is. I mean, the technical part of interior design is just as technical as any other consultant on the project. We're detailing, we're doing all of those things that fall within just that black and white technical aspect of it. You might not be into FF&E.
And that's okay.
I would care less to ever do FF&E ever again. I love the technical side, but there's other people in the company that are amazing at FF&E. And so it's also so team and collaborative and all the things to make a whole project work, because my strength is construction administration and technical aspects to a project. Well, someone else's strength might be, the finished palette and the concept and the FF&E. So it's a whole group that makes a project work. Again, back to my point, it's just that that full group that really makes a project successful. It's not one person. It's a full team. I always try to give credit where credit's due. There's no way that I could ever say that like I did this all by myself.
No.
You know?
And it is funny because there are some people out there like, I did this whole project. I'm like, did you though?
Did you? Yeah.
It's a team of 20 or more.
Right. And if you're out there in the industry and you do have some years under your belt and you're going out to interview, no one is expecting you to say that you did the whole project yourself. I think that's a little bit of a gray area too, is if I interview somebody and they've got 5 years of experience, I'm not thinking that they did everything from start to finish themselves. They probably have
I love this
team.
conversation because I sat on an IIDA panel recently and it was for young leaders.
Right.
And one of the questions I got at the end of the panel was, as a hiring professional, what are you looking for from us?
Right.
So this was a person that was 1 or 2 years out of school, and she was asking, what do you want to see in a portfolio? What do you want to see? What are you really looking for? And one of my answers was, I want to know that I'm hiring somebody with a growth mindset. I don't want you to know everything. I want to know that you know the basics of, especially at that age and that experience level. I want to know that you are willing to learn. You're willing to collaborate. You're willing to listen. And you don't have a big head about it. You know, I want to know that you're a good human being and you're going to work well with the team.
Team player, attitude. Desire,
attitude,
to learn, all of those things have, you don't have to be like this beautiful portfolio. I look back at my portfolio and I laugh. I'm like, how did I even ever get my first job? Because my portfolio was just but I know I went in there wanting to learn and with a good attitude, knowing that, I didn't know anything, but I was just so thankful to have a first job and been able to have a growth path in my career that complements my dedication and aspirations for an interior designer.
For sure. It wasn't your portfolio while we hired you.
Okay,
Do
good.
You know why?
Why?
We asked you a question about collaboration, and you talked about being on that it had nothing to do with interior design. It was about your volleyball team and how you collaborated with your team members. And I were very specific. I don't remember all the answer you gave, but it was about your team. You talked about your team. It was about we, not me.
Right.
And I was like, hire this girl right now.
I love that.
Let's do it. Just because someone that is going to come into it and know that it's not about them and that it's about other people, that's important.
Right.
And I think that in our industry, it's not about the best idea or one source. It's about sparking creativity amongst a group. And sometimes, just having people that are comfortable with collaborating with others and having that is sometimes you can't teach.
Right.
And so, that's why we were like, hire her right now.
Hey, it was
send her the offer letter.
Experience. Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So let's back up a little bit because this first podcast is just you and I, and we're really telling our story leading up to how we met.
Okay.
We joked how I met your mother. It's like how you met your muse.
Right.
Maybe that's what it.
Oh,
maybe it'll be named that. Who knows? But let's talk a little bit about that. So, in order to be an interior designer, it's not because you have a TikTok channel.
True. We didn't have TikTok
no,
back then.
No. It was Facebook. Yeah, Facebook was there. But
it was there.
Yeah, so what made you decide, okay, we're going to do this? Because in order to be a designer, you have to go to an accredited school. You have to sit for an NCIDQ exam afterwards. So it's like the law, bar exam for lawyers. And a lot of people don't understand that. And we're going to have a whole episode on what it takes to get to that licensing and why it's important, because that is very important to Bridget and I, right?
Very.
But let's start back.
Yeah.
Think back.
So, for me, my want to be an interior designer might be a different path than others, but I never wanted to be anything other than an interior designer. I would say from a young age, I'm kind of the black sheep of the family. I'm the baby. My family's full of entrepreneurs, but lawyers and engineers and things like that. I was always kind of the creative one that my dad worked overseas when I was young, so traveling to Europe was very frequent for my family. And when we went into a building or to a restaurant or into a hotel, I'm the one going into the restrooms, like checking everything out and seeing what it looks like. So for me, interior design has always been the path that I wanted to go down. And then it was just when I got to the age of going to college, okay, how can I go down a path that will set me up for success later in my career? Right. I know a ton of amazing designers who went back to school and became an interior designer after already graduating with a different degree. But for me, it was really, my road was so clear on me wanting to be an interior designer. I didn't know what that meant when I was younger, but I knew that I liked the way that spaces made me feel. And so my path, coming out of high school was, well, first, as Melanie mentioned, I played volleyball in college, got a scholarship to Louisiana Tech. So it was really me vetting where I could marry my passions of playing volleyball at a collegiate level, but also having a great interior design program that was accredited that could get to where I wanted to be in my career. Mm-hmm. So I went to Louisiana Tech, became, an interior designer, graduated from, at Louisiana Tech, it was the School of Architecture and Interior Design. Great program. Mm-hmm. And we did a lot of classes with the architecture team. So it was very collaborative. I've obviously have a huge team mind in myself just with my history of playing sports. And graduated from Louisiana Tech, ended up picking up a minor in business. So I had kind of this both-sided minded, as people call it, this creativity side of interior design, but also this basis of business to know that interior design is still a business at the end of the day, you know? So it's not all about how much time you're taking in your renderings, or it's a business at the end of the day. So it was important for me to have a level head coming in with both sides, and then just the openness to learn. Mm-hmm. I find a lot of people start at a firm where it knocks their whole vision of being an interior designer, and then they don't want to do it anymore.
It makes me so sad. I know a great designer that just hopped over to be a rep, and she's kicking butt. Right. But, it makes me really sad because she had it, it's exactly great. But it does. Your first job out can be a deal breaker. It can be a deal breaker. Choose wisely. Choose wisely
on your first job. It can be a deal breaker. And my first job, I was so blessed to have you. And so you fueled my want even more to be an interior designer and to learn more and to continue my career. And, that was in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm a Texas girl, born and raised. So, I was ready to make a jump back to Texas and made a leap of faith into a multifamily interior design firm. And I learned so much there, had a great experience of just everything I was exposed to, all the lessons learned, the job sites. I can't explain how important it is to learn on the job site, go on job sites, see how a contractor thinks, because it'll make your drawings better, right? Mm-hmm. And that just kind of led me to starting my own company, Emerson James Studio. And that's where I'm at now with 3 employees and running a full service interior design company here in Dallas.
Incredible. So proud. So incredibly proud. My story is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I grew up under my dad's drafting table. Mm-hmm. He was a subcontractor and he was in metal fabrication. Mm-hmm. So they did a lot of jobs. He traveled a lot, but it was more like Air Force bases. Mm-hmm. So he was doing metal panels on roofing and walls. And he started out sweeping the floors at that company when he was young. Mm-hmm. I want to say it was like 16 maybe. And he ended up, somebody taught him how to draft. They needed some extra hands. And he ended up going from sweeping the floors to drafting and helping. He was tracing roof plans. Wow. So they just needed somebody to help, just extra hands on deck, right? Yeah. And so he'd sit at the drafting table and he learned and he grew and he was mentored and he ended up owning the company.
Amazing.
And it was a really cool thing to play under his drafting table.
Right.
And now it's in my office, which is cool. So my kids play under it. And especially during the pandemic, it was really fun to watch them do blocks and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I have to say that influenced my career heavily because I knew I wanted to do something in that realm. I just didn't really understand what. When I was in high school, I actually had a home economic teacher that opened my mind to interior design. And we were talking about the different careers that you could have. I don't even know if they have home ec anymore. Do they?
I don't know.
I took it. You did?
Yeah.
I don't know. But she opened my eyes to it. And we had a mentor program, and I mentored under a local interior designer, and she was residential. And one of the biggest things, I knew I did not want to do residential. I knew I wanted to do commercial, but I didn't know what that meant at the time. I didn't really understand. And I remember she took me on a job site visit. And before we walked in, she said, okay, Melanie, I just want you to know the most important thing is to listen to your clients. I did not pick these gold Venetian blinds, but this is what they love and this is what they want.
Right.
So we're going to install some gold Venetian blinds today. I was like, all right. But what she taught me is it's all about listening and learning, and doing that discovery and just understanding what clients need and want, and then getting to work. And it was really cool. It opened my mind up to it. And I thought, I was in high school and I thought, okay, I'm doing this. I'm going to be an interior designer. And I still didn't really understand what that meant. While everybody else is waffling about, do I be a teacher? Am I
nurse, business? Yeah.
All the things. Do I just be a stay-at-home mom? Like everybody's trying to figure it out, right? I was very specific, interior design. So I went to look for different accredited universities. And I ended up landing at Stephen F. Austin. So I was a first generation college student. So none of my family had ever went to college and never had the opportunity to.
Right.
And for me, it was a really incredible opportunity in my family to just move forward. Right. And so I took it very seriously. And because we weren't like a low income family by any means necessarily, but, we were average. And so that, I had a lot of scholarships and I took a lot of prerequisite classes at the community college to try to offset some of the things that might be a little bit more expensive at a university.
Right.
So come my junior year, being an interior designer, interior design school, I remember they said, hey, Melanie, you can graduate. And I was 20. And I went to my dad and I said, hey, guess what? I can graduate early. And he said, oh, no. So I was going to graduate. It would have been 2006. And there was a recession headed our way. And my dad knew that. Right. And he was forewarning me without, totally breaking and crushing my heart.
Right.
He knew that I was probably not going to get a job out of school.
Right.
And so he said, no, you have to double major in something. And so I actually ended up double majoring in hospitality. And along the way, I had a professor, amazing, Dr. Wittenbach, who encouraged me, why don't you let's take classes that focus on hospitality design. Have you heard of hospitality design? I was like, so is that hotels, restaurants, and she's like, yes. So I'm going to teach you all the things in and out of how operations work behind the scenes. And I got it. I was like, okay, I'm doing this, right? And she ended up recommending that I'd get a scholarship or apply for a scholarship for NEWH. And it just happened to be through the Dallas chapter. And I didn't even have Dallas on my radar at the time.
Right.
But I won that scholarship. Amazing. I have no idea how. But so my junior year, I won the scholarship and I came to Dallas and I was surrounded around a bunch of hospitality designers. And they were so inspiring.
Right.
It was just whole nother level of looking at where they worked and what they did. And so got my scholarship, hung out in Dallas and thought, you know what? I think I might want to move to Dallas after this. So that's where I ended up applying for jobs after school. And so networking is so important. We're going to talk a lot about that on this podcast.
Yes.
Come to find out, I applied to Duncan & Miller. And one of the reasons why I stood out from all the applicants that had applied was I won that scholarship that Dr. Wittenbach encouraged me to do. And so I decided at that moment I was going to be an international hospitality designer with no kids and no family.
Love it. Where are you now?
No, but I think it's important to understand the journey and how you pivot along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And pivoting is okay.
Right.
It's a journey.
Yes.
My leadership coach says that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a journey.
It's a journey.
So you're a journeyman.
Right.
And not in a bad way, but sometimes you have to pivot and you have to turn and to really realize where you're supposed to be.
Right.
But every step along the way leads up. And I look back and I look at all the different steps I took to get from point A to point B. And it's incredible how linked they are.
Right.
But I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that firm, it was a really neat, interesting experience. My first job was 11 million square feet in Macau, China. I think back and I'm like, whoa. Compared to my 20,000 square foot workplace project,
Right.
whoa, oh my goodness.
Right.
But it was cool because it opened up my mind of creativity and how I think and how I process, how I listen. And I was surrounded around amazing designers. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say, we gold leaf things. Mm-hmm. We mother of pearl the out of everything.
Your budget was budgeting. It was at the top.
There was no budgeting. I can name all the marbles. It was an incredible experience. But guess what? My dad was right. 2009 happened, recession hit, and, talk about rock your world. Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of people that, the last few years that have been experiencing that.
Yes. COVID hit our industry hard.
So hard, right?
A lot of great Dallas companies had to close doors. And designers kind of moving places. And it's
like the great move now. Because now designers are not staying in place very long.
Right.
And so as an employer, it's very difficult to maintain a team.
It is.
And so I think that there's a point in time where, everyone's kind of jumping around and there's inflated salaries out there. Mm-hmm. And, from a business owner where I'm a leader over a group, right? Mm-hmm. It's really hard because fees haven't necessarily increased, but salaries have, and time has on the projects, right? Mm-hmm. So, but going back to that, it was the greatest thing that happened to me getting laid off.
Right.
Totally. 100%.
And in the moment, you would have never thought that, but you look back now and you're like, there's a reason this happened.
I was devastated.
Oh, I'm sure.
I was devastated. I was working on projects in Dubai and really cool, interesting things that as a first-time designer, it was just, wow.
Right.
But leading up to that, it's like everything happened for a reason and it's just built upon. And it's just really, it's interesting. So I couldn't find a job. Mm-hmm. I couldn't apply to even direct buy. I would have hated that. They would have hated working with me too. No, but I got offered one job that was, hey, you might be contract or you might not. And, we may need you 10 hours. We may need you 60. And it's just not sustainable, right?
Right.
So, we kind of fast forward and I ended up talking about every stepping stone being a stepping stone. Right? Mm-hmm. I actually knew one person in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I ended up visiting her. And literally over the weekend, she said, hey, why don't you, we called it fun employment. If you put F in front of unemployment, it's fun employment.
Fun employment. Okay.
She said, I know you've been on fun employment for a minute. Why don't you interview at the convention center and use your hospitality degree? Because she was in hospitality. So that's event planning was part of that.
Right.
So hotel management, event planning, it all fell under the umbrella. She said, why don't you use your other major? And so I interviewed literally a few days later.
Wow.
And I got the job. It was not for me. It only lasted a few months. But what it did do is it sparked my relationships and my networking. Mm-hmm. So working for the city, I got to know big business owners.
Right.
I got to know the mayor. I got to know all the city people.
Right.
And downtown development.
Right.
And it just spearheaded something that I didn't know that was going to happen.
Right.
So, those relationships stuck with me and I ended up working with them when I went back to an architecture firm. And I didn't realize at the time I was doing business development.
Right.
But that's what it was.
Right.
Which we are going to talk about.
Yes.
How you obtain clients and how you
network, business develop, everything.
What's the difference?
Right.
I think the deal making process is it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen overnight.
Nope. It's not like you meet somebody at one networking event and say, oh, they're going to give me a project because I was introduced to them at one network. Like that's step 1 out of 9,000 you have to get to actually turn that network, that connection into.
And you have to maintain that relationship.
Yes.
It's about trust.
Trust.
It's about trust that you're going to do a good job. And because ultimately if they select you, it's on them. Mm-hmm. So and for like workplace,
right.
There was a broker recently we were having a conversation and she said, it's very saturated here in the Dallas market. So when we have newer companies come in, so, the firm I'm at, we're not new, we're 50 years old, but we're newer to Dallas. It's their butt. If you have to on the line, and they have to know that your team is going to do a really stellar job because,
and you think about it from that standpoint. How many people are you willing to put your neck on the line for?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's probably, I could count on one hand. It's not like could put my neck on the line for anybody.
No, it's your reputation.
It's your whole reputation.
It's your brand.
Your brand.
Another thing we'll talk about.
Your whole, if you recommend somebody who does not a good job, that's a reflectiveness of you.
It is. It is.
As crazy as that sounds, but it's like that, putting your neck on the line for people it's huge. And when people do it for you, you really have to take that and run with it. I think that's one thing I've learned is if someone's going to put their neck out for me, I better just above and beyond exceed expectations.
You were literally reading my mind.
Right.
You have to go above and beyond.
Exactly.
In our industry, it is a service industry. And that's one of the things I think a lot of people forget. So for lawyer, you would never nickel and dime your lawyer. But interior designers, we get nickel and dimed all the time.
All the time.
But every hour, it's an hourly rate to be, operate.
Right.
Regardless if you see that or not.
Exactly.
So time is money.
Time is always money, especially for our clients.
Yes.
They're paying interest rates, they're paying loans, they're paying whatever it is to make this project happen. And our time is money, their time is money. Time's a huge deal in our industry.
It is for sure. So my story is almost to where we met. Almost. So one more step of the story here. So after the convention center, I ended up going to a architectural metal manufacturer. Yeah. Was not interior design those years. I acted a lot of it, but I was actually working with architects and interior designers on their dreams.
Right.
For their clients. So I actually learned about takeoffs, material takeoffs, project management, shipping,
all
LTLs.
Glamorous items.
Glamorous engineering.
Right.
Yeah. And because I grew up in a brake form shop, I knew a lot about flashings.
Right.
All the things. But I learned about powder coating. I had a plant team. I had a drafting team. And I was in my 20s.
Wow.
But I learned project management.
Right.
It was incredible. So when my time was up there and I decided, you know what, I really want to be back. The industry is booming. I want to be back in an architecture firm. That's where I ended up at Prevo. And in my interview, we're going to talk about how small our industry is.
Right.
That $11 million or 11 million square foot project I worked on. I was in the interview and our old boss said, hey, oh my gosh, we have an architect that used to work on this project in Macau, China with you. It's like, what? And here comes, here he comes. And he said, oh my gosh, I was on the architecture. I was on the outside. You were on the inside. What a small world. We both were in Dallas at the time.
Wow.
Now we're in Shreveport and now we may work together. How cool is that?
Small world.
Yeah. It's wild, right? Wild. And so we ended up working together and this is where Bridget and I meet.
Yeah.
And I ended up hiring her on right out of school. And we had a small team. We had 15 people or so.
Mm-hmm.
We had 2 offices. I had the amazing opportunity to help start the Houston office, not Dallas. Wish that they were in Dallas at the time.
I know. Right?
But it was a really cool experience because you learn to be nimble at a small firm. You learn to you wear a lot, good and bad. You wear a lot of hats.
Yes.
So you're in the weeds very early on. You're not just handed something and say, draft this or pick up the red lines. You're more embedded in the projects and you have more ownership of it.
Right.
You see it through a lot more. So, and we had an amazing CA guy. I love him. He's awesome. We still talk. I mean, he's just taught me so much. And we're going to talk a lot about construction administration because it is an important way that you're going to learn. And even if you're in school, I would really just try to do mentorships and internship programs, even if you could just follow somebody for a day.
Right.
If everybody could follow Ronnie for a day.
Oh my goodness.
You know?
So much wisdom in that brain.
Oh my gosh. I remember him walking me through a job site and we were looking at roof drains and he was telling me the different sizes and what, the different mains and how that's the most commonly missed thing because you don't necessarily, at that time you're in AutoCAD, so you don't have everything that's 3D driven. And so you sometimes didn't know exactly where all the connections were going to happen.
Right.
Or if the elbows were different, then it's going to fall down. Or even like structural kickers, we would walk around job sites and he would say, okay, here's something you need to check in your structural drawings because you're going to have these ugly kickers and what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And I remember him specifically telling me, this is turning into Ronnieisms.
I know.
But, the thing is I remember him telling me, things are not designed with pixie dust. He's like, you need to be intentional and your team needs to be intentional about every detail you do.
Right.
And don't leave it off
because
for somebody else to do because you're going to get what you get and you can't throw a fit.
Right.
And so true.
I
have quoted him so many times.
Oh, he was great. I mean, and I think that is a testament to like what you said, learning on the construction administration side, because you're seeing that everything has to be specified and has to be intentional or it'll affect your client's vision.
Yeah.
They don't always know what it means, what they want, like what it actually is.
Yes.
But it's our job to make what they want happen. And, if I don't know, the MEP consultant's putting things in certain places we won't be beautiful like this vision that they have, then, it's our job to step in and say, hey, this isn't part of the vision. We need to rework this. We need to be intentional with where we're putting, whatever it is.
So one of the things that he really taught me, it was drywall reveals. I got talked into using some extruded metal lens on that job.
From a rep?
Yes. Well, so these extruded metal ones required a different type of blocking behind them. And so they had beautiful drywall flanges and I was like, ooh, these can be like mudded in. They're going to be beautiful. And come to find out, I didn't detail it like I should have. Lesson learned. Never will happen again. It hasn't happened again. I haven't specified those again. But it's very common that they'll miss that step. So if you're not detailing that drywall reveal, that control, they're actually acting as a control joint. That was the whole seller is like, you get this beautiful, but it's also a control joint. Yeah. And I remember going on that job site and these are expansive walls. And I was like, why is it cracked all the way? And it turned out we did some discovery. The contractor we had in our spec, which Bible to our project.
CYA. Learn that.
CYA. We actually, that was on our list of names for the podcast.
Yeah, CYA was a name.
And then we thought, well. Yeah. So, but if you don't detail it, they're not going to know. And those things could very easily get missed. And the contractor did the right thing. The manufacturer did the right thing. And they went back and they fixed it. But at the end of the day, I could have done one more detail. We could have done one more detail.
Right.
And I do think that there's certain things that make it over detailed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that we need to talk about on the podcast, not today, is delegated design.
Mm-hmm.
That comes up a lot,
Mm-hmm.
especially right now.
Right.
Another thing that's coming up a lot, and on that panel that I was on,
Mm-hmm.
I got asked. So when we started out,
mm-hmm.
we didn't have even design development priced a lot of times.
Oh, now they're pricing it.
Oh, and SD was never priced.
Right.
Were you there when we would do the opinion of cost, the
No.
OPCC?
No.
We'd go get the book out. We go get the book out and we're like, okay, plastic laminate countertops and with base cabinet is $100 a lineal foot.
Uh-huh.
So you knew the construction cost of everything.
Right.
And so we would do these opinion of cost and do our own takeoffs. And we were pretty spot on a lot of times. We were good.
Nice.
Really good. But there was a time where when they started pricing everything out, sometimes we'd price jobs out in DD
mm-hmm.
because the design was baked.
Right.
And you had enough information.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing we need to talk a lot about, and I would love to have a general contractor come on board and talk about it with us, or like a pre-con person. Pre-con, I don't think existed back then. I don't think that was.
I don't think it did.
Yeah, I don't think it did either. Yeah. And so having that has complicated what we do in our profession and has even decreased our profitability because we're pricing things out in SD.
Right.
And we're having a contractor say, well, you at DD, you didn't have this, and this in here. Well, it's like, no, really? No, it wasn't designed.
Right. Well, and then all the assumptions that are made is based on your DD set. Yeah. You're like, wait, I haven't gotten to that yet.
Yeah.
You know?
Of course you didn't have decorative lights because there was no RCP.
Right. Like, so it wasn't there yet.
Yeah. You're like, I had put it in a narrative to include decorative lighting,
right?
Whatever, or architectural features, but it is very hard, I think, now. And so what I would love to do is really dive into that on how we can strategize and have a better process and just really understand from a general contractor side too, because it has really impacted our profession overall in the way we design. I mean, it's like dream crushing times 10, usually.
Right. And so how much that you are supposed to include in a pricing set at such a level of design that is not developed yet. Because at the end of the day, like we've talked about time a little bit, but you do need the time between your team to coordinate and communicate and listen and do these things to make a beautiful construction document set that is coordinated. Right. And you can tell when it's rushed.
Oh, for sure. I mean, 100%. Things aren't aligned up.
Right.
You know, I'm very OCD about alignment.
Oh, I know.
So it's hard though, because say now in Revit, you're having to create patterns for something, and let's use like an LVT flooring. So you start out and you have it the correct size, but you're VEing and it's different sizes. So now you're having to go, it's like a 30-minute, maybe more endeavor to go update a pattern, get it loaded back in, realign everything everywhere. Oh, once the realigning part is like not the 30 minutes. Right. Like that's more depending on the project size. So it's a whole thing.
It is.
And so we have to learn how to work smarter. And I think our industry, it's time to evolve. Right. But we have to be our best advocates and we have to work together to create that new standard level of, you know, is it that, I don't know. I don't have an answer for it right now. Right. But it's a struggle. It is. It is definitely a struggle. So this podcast, I know we talked a lot about our history, but let's look forward. Right. So you and I really want to have this as a way to inspire, advocate, and educate. And so we're going to be touching a lot of different topics. What is top of mind for you right now?
Man, I think for me, the hottest topic that I'm excited to talk about is lessons learned. Yes. Because I really think that as a designer, we're not perfect.
No.
There's always problems. I've never been on a project that has no problems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have, like, reach out, because who are you working with and what are you doing? Because I have never had a project that doesn't have problems.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that I would have the knowledge base that I do right now is seeing all those problems and knowing not to ever do it again.
Right.
And it's hard because it's like you had to make a mistake on some project to learn, and you don't want to do that to your client ever, right?
No.
Like, you don't ever want to make a mistake, but it
also, it's about owning up to it and doing the right thing.
Right.
Too.
Definitely. So lessons learned is probably the hottest topic that I'm excited to talk about, and just some real life experiences that I've gone through in my career on lessons learned, and how to react to maybe a very passionate contractor or client. We're women, you know, we're on a job site, things like that, just maybe maneuvering not only what you do when you find an issue and a lesson learned, but how you appropriately get it to the finish line without causing this big uproar or snowball effect, or making sure that you're still on this team that's trying to get it correct and to the finish line without kind of like dropping a bomb and running away, you know? So also just the process of like how you get through that lessons learned and how you communicate directly and efficiently to make sure that the problem's getting resolved. What about you? What's your most exciting topic that you want to talk about?
Man. So I have a lot, actually. This one's not as exciting, but it's so important. I would really like to talk a lot about contracts. I'd like to talk about the business side of it. I'm helping build a business. You have started your own business, which is a whole thing. I mean, you've asked me some questions sometimes, and I'm like, I have no idea how you do that.
I don't either. That's why I'm asking you.
But I also want to really enforce and really just drive it in about relationships and how much they matter, and genuine relationships.
Right.
Networking.
Right.
I really want to talk about that other side of it, that a lot of people don't understand what it takes to get a job. Right. Or to be trusted for that, but they want the promotion. They want to be that, you know, so say they want to be in that director of interior design role or that business owner. Right. But no one really understands truly how much it takes to do that. I know when we were even setting up the LLC for this, I had never done that before. So I was asking you a lot of questions because I have no idea. I would love to be able to expose that. Yeah. And behind the curtain of some of the things, the challenges that we faced or things. And I will say, as a leader in an organization, I don't have all the answers, but I want to share everything that I have learned. I want to pour into others what's important to me. And for this podcast, whatever comes top of mind, I also want our listeners to be able to have the opportunity to submit topics to us for different things.
Yes, different questions. Yes. I mean, things that maybe has come up that you don't know how to address, or you don't know what to do, and we could talk about it and answer it and bring on a specialist in that topic even. You know, we've talked about bringing on everybody from developers to reps to contractors to brokers to finance side.
Finance side would be great. So understanding that and yeah, so I think that, and then I think another thing we need to talk about, because this came up a lot, because when I've told people we have a podcast and we're doing this and this is the way it's branded, and they have so many questions about brand. Yes. What is their personal brand and how does that relate to the firm they're at? Right. And I think we needed to dive deep into that.
Very much so.
Very deep, because I actually did not understand brand truly until a few years ago. I had a mentor in a review said, Mel, what's your brand? I said, I don't have a brand. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I don't have a brand. Yeah, you do. You do what you say you're going to do. You're highly creative. You're very relational. You're a connector. That is your brand. Right. So what are you going to do with that brand?
And that's going to be with you no matter where you are, who you're working for, what you're doing. That is your brand identity that nobody can take away from you. No matter if get kicked to the curb and let go, a bad part, that's your own self brand, which I think is so important because you might go from firm to firm or whatever your journey is in this industry, but like what you define as yourself and your brand, that's so important because we'll talk about this, but the industry's small. Everybody knows everyone.
It's so small.
Everybody knows just all the little quirks about everything. And,
it's going to carry with you good or bad.
Right. And the likelihood of you going to another firm and maybe working with someone else before or whatever it is very, very likely.
I mean, look at my story.
Right.
So when I moved back to Dallas, I actually that architect had moved back to Dallas and he happened to be, I wanted to be in hospitality and high-end corporate and he happened to be at a firm. And so I texted him and I said, hey, I'm looking for a new role and I want specifically it to be in this.
Right.
And he immediately connected me and I ended up at that firm with him. So we laugh whenever I left that firm about a year ago. I said, third time's a charm. He goes, you mean fourth? Because we technically worked together on the Venetian project. But look at that relationship.
Right.
We didn't even know each other in Dallas the first go round back in 2007. We had no idea. So there's no telling how our paths will cross now. I would love to collaborate with him on a project.
Yeah.
With the firm I'm at now.
Amazing.
Yeah. So cool. It'd be a great moment. Yeah. Full circle. Yeah. Right. So some people may end up becoming your client. They may end up being your boss. They may end up being, I don't know, your partner. I don't know.
You never know.
So you never know. And it's really just such a small industry. But I will say, going back to the brand, when I left that firm, that mentor of mine looked at me and said, congratulations, Mel. You get to take your brand
that's so
in your relationships. So it's been really cool because, he said, hey, I want you to write down your successes and failures when we get back together. Let's talk about them.
Right.
And I can't wait. So that first time we met a few months after I left, we had lunch and he was like, okay, pull out your successes and failures and let's talk about them. And so I started chipping away at some of the stuff. And when I was excited about it, he got really quiet and he said, I can't wait to see what you're doing in a year.
No.
He was like, you're speaking to the world, you're doing it.
Right.
And he was like, it's humbling, right? Because you're helping build this name for your firm in this area, and that's new and scary. But you're doing it, and I can't wait to see where it goes in a year.
Yeah.
And those are the mentors, those are the humans that I cannot recommend enough that people connect with.
Right.
Seek them out.
Seek them out.
Seek them out.
Find
most people want to help.
Most people do.
Yes,
I mean,
most
you
people
have
do.
people who don't, but for the most part, people want to help and have this next generation of educated, good
100%.
Interior designers or architects or whatever industry really you're in. Like they want to pass their knowledge along and to keep it going. Yeah. There's not much gatekeeping, I would say, in interior design. Like we're pretty transparent, pretty open. People want to share their knowledge. Even, there's so many times that I could be on a larger scale project that has multiple interior designers on it and different interior designers in the different retail spaces or whatever it is. And that collaboration I'm having with the other interior designer and listening to them and not overstepping and making sure that, okay, well, we've got to run our ducting this way into your space. Like, can we make that work? And really coordinating and being on top of it.
Yeah.
But I think everyone you come across in your career path you come across for a reason. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, but for most of the time, you're coming across people for a reason.
Right.
And that's how I felt when I met you.
Yeah. Same.
I was first starting my career, this young I think I just turned 21 because I started there in August. Just turned 21 in July and just trying to go in and just find somebody that would help me get to where I knew I wanted to be.
Right.
And kind of know my place too. Know that, I remember you used to look at me and say, okay, like, like we're about to go into this meeting, like make sure that you're prepared and you know what we're going to talk about. Cause I wasn't talking, like, let's get real, what we're going to talk about, and make sure you take notes and ask me questions afterwards if you don't understand something. So, it's a full circle moment to be doing this podcast with you.
For sure.
Starting my first ever job with you hiring me and learning from you for a year, and then moving to the big city of Dallas and the rest of my career happening afterwards, it's kind of like my foundation started with you, and now it's full circle for me to be talking about all those things with you.
And now you're helping me.
Hey, who knew?
How cool. How cool. Well, this is going to be a fun journey for us. We keep saying journey because it's so important and it's about the lessons of it. So actually, I am big on different quotes, and I'll quote books throughout this and my favorite people. But one of the quotes that I heard recently, it resonated with me big, and it's actually from Steve Jobs. And so I think it's a good one to end on. Some years you win, some years you build character.
That's cool.
Let it set in.
2024 was a character building year for me. It wasn't a win, it was a character building.
Yes, it was character building for sure.
Amazing.
So going into 2025, which is where we're at, there's going to be hardships. There's going to be things that we learn. And my hope is that we can take those lessons learned, like we were talking about earlier, and help others.
Right.
And that's what this podcast is all about.
It really is.
Helping others and passing on what's been passed on to us.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right.
And if we don't know it, then somebody will.
There's going to be things we don't know.
Oh,
for sure.
Every day. People are like, you think you get to a certain part of your career and you know things, and you're always learning. Yeah. Always, always, always.
So we're excited about the next podcast to come.
Yes.
And you can find us on Spotify, Apple, all the things.
Anywhere you get your podcasts.
Like and subscribe is what my 9-year-old wanted me to tell everyone.
Like and subscribe to Design Muse Podcast. Follow, like, and subscribe to us. We obviously have a great time talking and can't wait to get more in depth into certain topics. And first podcast was really about introducing ourselves, listeners kind of getting to know us and where we're at in our careers. And really our goal is to be transparent and to be honest and share everything that we know. And hopefully it helps somebody along the way.
For sure. All right. Well, until next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.